Welcome to the October 12th, 2022 meeting of the West Clermont Local School District Board of Education. Mr. Romano, I call to order. We do the pledge now, right?
Yep, we'll call down first. Yep. Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney.
Present.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Present.
Mr. Chumley. Present. Mr. Patton.
Present.
All present.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any public commentary? No. Okay. Superintendent business, 4.01 student voice.
Well, Mr. Young, take it away.
Hello, good evening, folks. Come on up. So, when we were first talking about student voice, the first thing that popped into my head in West Clermont was our portrait of a graduate and kind of what we're working towards every single day. So we don't have graduates per se at Holly Hill, but we have a fifth grader, which is the closest thing going, right? So this is Mackenzie. She's a little nervous, but I'm going to stand next to her and she's going to talk to us about why she loves Holly Hill, what she's excited about learning, and kind of her future plans. You ready? You can do it.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie Reynolds. I've been going to Holly Hill for 3 years now, and what I love most about Holly Hill is the teachers and staff because they always put the students first. What I'm very excited about learning about is writing because it helps prepare me for the future, and I love writing new stories. In the future, I would love to go to college to become an architect one day and hopefully build houses and maybe even my own.
Do you guys have any questions for Mackenzie?
What grade are you in, Mackenzie?
I'm in 5th grade.
Fifth grade. And you already know you'd like to be an architect. I'm very impressed.
That's awesome. Are you excited about going to the middle school next year and getting into a bigger school?
I'm a little nervous based on how much people are going to be there.
It'll be fine, I promise.
Yeah, we've got about 50 kids in the 5th grade, so it's a little different.
Yeah.
So I can see that. It's a little different.
Yeah.
Just sort of.
But she's an awesome leader. First kid that popped into mind when I was thinking about who could come and share. We had another student that we invited who couldn't make it tonight, but just a great kid, works hard and does the right thing every single day. Yeah. All right. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie. We are so glad that you're here and telling your story. We are very proud of you and the hard work that you do at Holly Hill, and we hope that you go back and tell your teachers the same thing you told us so they can hear how valued that they feel, or that you feel about them. So. Oh, one of her teachers is here. Oh, I'm so sorry. How did I miss that? I'm clueless. Okay, thank you so much for coming and supporting her. And Mom, thanks to come for you too. All right, we have a lot on our agenda tonight, so let's go ahead and get started with our guests from Duke Energy. So Mr. LaFata, you want to introduce?
I'd like to introduce Jessica Kramer. She's a senior right-of-way agent. She's going to talk to you tonight about the Summerside project, where we're going to allow Duke to use our property to get to 275 replacement of a gas pipeline.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you guys having me out here. Like he said, I'm Jessica Kramer. I do land acquisitions for Duke Energy. So just sharing the project with everybody, just kind of discussing what the big picture kind of looks like and why we need the school board's help in order to accomplish this project. So this is what we are considering an urgent project. We are upgrading a gas line that is currently running underneath I-275, and you can see there the yellow line is the old gas line, the green line is the new gas line that is going to be going through there. So the gas line is not specifically on the school property, so there's no easements, no permanent, nothing that will be recorded or anything like that on the school's property. It's actually on an adjacent parcel there. But we need access. You can see how it's very tight back there, so we've got to be able to get back to that gas line. We also have to get to the gas line on the opposite side, so we're working with all of the property owners on the other side of I-275 there, where we are going to have to go between the homes there, have a path, have the same setup that we're currently asking for the board to approve on that side. But as you can see, The only access is A, through the homes, or B, through the school's property there. The project is slated to start in January. We have to do this, like I said, because the gas line is, it's a failing gas line, so it needs to be replaced in order for us to continue to provide that safe and reliable gas. Let me see if this is working here. Oh, there we go. So as I had mentioned before, it's kind of a closer view there. It's a temporary construction easement, so it's just granting us, construction rights to get back to that site. Like I had also mentioned already, we have went through several different plans for this gas line. A lot of the question is, well, go a little bit farther down, go somewhere else, try to figure out something to where we're not impacting these homes. We have already tried that. There's a big elevation change that happens, so we could not safely cross underneath 275 with the ODOT requirements because of the elevation change. We're hoping to stay kind of farther down into the farm fields where we weren't impacting so many families and homes and trees, but unfortunately, that was not an option. So we are back to the, back to the plan A here. This is what we consider an Exhibit A. So this is what will be part of the documents for that temporary construction easement. There is going to be 6 trees that we are going to be able to save, 6 mature trees that kind of fall within what we would consider our temporary construction easement area. But we are not going to be impacting those. So we kind of pointed those out so that we are aware. We are up against all of the homes there, you will see, and it's that gray kind of dotted picture is what you're looking at for that temporary construction easement there. The larger portion of it that you will see that is more to the west side, that will be the access path. So we are going to come up through the access path. We are going to timber mat that path to try to keep the restoration as easy as possible, and of course as much mud, debris, things like that off the roads during that time. So this is kind of a view if you're looking straight back, if you're standing on the school property, kind of what you'd be looking at when it kind of opens up a little bit. It looks from this photo like there's a lot of trees, but from those 2 green arrows pointing down and over, those trees are not going to be impacted. So we take kind of a little circle there to miss those trees and then hug that property line for that 30 feet back. So there will be a 30 feet wide. They will have to clear the area that is back there. I know we discussed we're going to remove all the trees, debris, everything will go off the school property. And then we will use some tree screening there for that initial view. So we are compensating the board for the tree screening to be replaced. That way when you're at the school property and you look over, you don't have, a bare spot or an eyesore or anything like that. So we've worked with the help of the school officials. They had gave me a local landscape company to come in and, plant that row of tree lines to where it's more of a visual appearing after everything's said and done. The project, I don't know if I had mentioned this at the beginning, the project is slated for about 4 months, 4 months being the longest. So starting in January for that 4 months. When you look back and you look at an aerial or a Google Earth image, you see, it looks like there's a ton of trees back there. It looks like we're taking out, a lot of mature trees. It's really not the case. When you get back there, this is what you see. It's a lot of overgrown brush. The vegetation, will be removed in this area, and we do this during the January timeframe, the winter timeframe, to avoid any nesting seasons and to make sure that we're meeting all the environmental requirements for that as well. So the biggest concern I know when me and Chuck had spoke on the phone is what about the property owners that are up against this access path? How are we going to be impacting them? What are their thoughts on it? Our goal, we do not want the school to have any negative feedback whatsoever from this. By you guys allowing us to use your property, you're actually helping them by us not going between their homes like we're having to do on the opposite side there. I did meet with all of the property owners along the path. They was very positive, they had very positivity for it because they were happy to see it be cleaned up back there. It is, there's trees falling, limbs falling on their property, on their fence lines, things like that. So they were very excited to see just a nice, clear 30-foot separation from these big, large, mature trees for the concerns of storms and things of that sort. We actually had a gentleman who is requesting that we remove everything up to it. That way he can have just that nice, just clarity back there, so. This just kind of goes over some special provisions that we've been working through with the schools. We're going to make sure that our construction time frame does not impact the drop-off and pickups for the students. They gave us some specific dates, some times, that we want to make sure that we're staying in there. So as I had mentioned before, January is when we are slated to start. It's planned for about 4 months or so. We've been working with Miss Courtney, the principal there, to make sure there's communication to the parents, the teachers, any questions that we can answer. We can provide any type of documents to send out, anything to make it easier for her there. We are happy to help with that. As I had mentioned before, we have communicated with all the property owners that are going to be impacted, that are going to be behind that path that we're clearing, as well as we're going to be sending out construction notices to the neighborhoods where that access, because we still have to come through the neighborhood there, so they're aware of it as well. There is a Summerside Discovery Trail. We are going to keep that closed just from a safety perspective, so kids are not, walking back and forth during this time. And of course, it's in the winter time, so I didn't think that that would be a huge impact. Ms. Courtney did not think so. We will have a safety fence around, so there'll be a 4-foot orange privacy kind of safety fence that kind of goes around the construction site, just to keep everything, blocked off to any students or anything like that. It's not going to be impacting any of the signs, the parent pickup drop-off signs. That'll all be behind that as well. And then any materials will be secured. So if there's anything left overnight, they will be put in an area that is secured to where, there's no access. Nobody can gain access to it. The sidewalk will be closed on Edwella Drive. So there's a sidewalk that kind of goes in front of that access path when we start in there. We will keep that closed. And then any damages or any repairs, that will be done at the completion of the project, just from a safety perspective as well. The timeframes are listed up there that we have discussed with the school to make sure that there's no impacts for pickup and drop-offs, parents waiting in line. We don't want that. As well as we are going to be using a street sweeper daily that will keep all of the streets free of mud and debris. It won't sweep it to the side. It's going to actually pick everything up there. There'll be construction traffic signs posted to where the construction team know exactly what path they're allowed to use. They can't cut into a different street or use a different access of the school. That way it is visible to everyone. The access route, which was that larger kind of gray area that we had talked about, 6 inches of the topsoil will be removed, and then the matting will be placed, and then that actually helps with the restoration. So it comes out to be 1.425 acres. We will seed and straw it. We're working with the grounds crew, with the school, to make sure whatever seed we are using matches the grass seed that it is before. And then as well, providing that screening for the trees that will be removed. Tree removal, as we discussed before too, everything will be hauled off-site. There will be 2 trees that will be side trimmed that we won't be removing right when you first access off of Edwilla Drive there. We'll be side trimming those just so we don't snag them or anything like that. And then the 6 mature trees that you guys saw in that Exhibit A that will not be impacted as well are listed there. So I know that we did work, Chuck had put me in with the legal representative to make sure everything was approved. All of the language has been approved with the easement, the temporary construction easement documents. It has went through Duke's legal team as well as your legal team as well. We will be compensating West Clermont schools for this temporary construction easement. We're going to cover any costs if there's damages that are covered that, that we did not anticipate happening. If something happens and, if there's a tree or anything like that, all of those costs will be covered by Duke, as well as the restoration and the tree screening. So there's not going to be any associated costs that you guys will see after Duke leaves that site. So that's all I have.
So tonight's a night for you guys to get your questions answered. There's no vote tonight, but we'll bring that back to you later in October.
Does anyone have any questions?
Seems very straightforward.
You said 4 months. Is it usually quite a bit faster, or?
They told me 3 months, but I know how this works, so we're going with 4. So they told me it will be wrapped up within 3 months. That's why I'm giving you the 4-month time frame. So That is how long the temporary construction easement is. If something happens and it goes over that, we have put language in the document to where we would give you guys, associated, an additional compensation for that. If something was to happen and we were to hit something, that we weren't anticipating, that is always a possibility. But we want to make sure that we are compensating the school if we are there for the extended amount of time. So we did add that language into the agreement to where if something happens and say it's prolonged, you guys would be getting paid monthly for that.
So again, just to reiterate, we did check with all of the neighbors to make sure that we're not frustrating anybody, make sure that and everybody.
Yes, that is
On
correct,
board
yes.
with it,
I
everybody
met
was-
with all of them face to face, discussed the project with them. It was actually a lot of positive feedback. They were, like I had mentioned, they were very excited to see tree limbs are falling, on the property, on their fence line, things like that, back there. And, with the based off the pictures there, it's just kind of messy, so, it'll get seed strawed, that sort of thing, and then the vegetation can regrow. I know a couple of them had mentioned that they had been trying to keep it cleared over the past couple years, but it got a little out of hand, so they weren't able to keep that up, and so they were happy to kind of have a fresh start with that, so.
If Mother Nature doesn't cooperate with like snow and ice, how does that impact the work?
That is all based into the time length. So even if we have a bad week or anything like that, that is all kind of lumped into one. Like I said, the tree clearing has to be done during that winter time frame, and then as soon as, the ground breaks is when we'll start the other ones. Majority of the work will be, it looks like a big project to them, but, they do these all the
Every day,
time. But the tree clearing has to be done so we avoid that nesting season. So even if there is a foot of snow 1 week, it is still projected to be finished.
I just want to thank Duke for their partnership. Every time there's an emergency and we need somebody, we can always get a hold of someone, number one. Number two, you've been really proactive in meeting with all the stakeholders to fill them in on this project. And we've had projects similar, like out in Holly Hill, for instance, and it's a priority always that you guys get the information to us ahead of time, so thank you.
Yes, anything that we can help with, we are happy. I don't want it to be any extra work on anyone else, so no negative feedback, because you guys are saving, from having to go through their homes, so we appreciate you guys even being open to it.
We get to be the hero ones.
Yes, you guys are the heroes. You really, there's a lot of trees that are gonna be impacted, on another route, and then the homes as well, so.
Thank you so much for coming tonight.
My pleasure, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Jessica.
Yes.
So because I can't see anymore, I made an error and skipped over a field trip, so we need to come back to that. But then also something else awesome happened, and we had a visitor in the back. So let's bring up the fifth graders again and hear from our students at Holly Hill.
This is Cam, another fifth grader. I did not give the best instructions once they were here, direction-wise, so that's on me. But Cam made it. There he is. So Cam, just talk to us about why you love Holly Hill and all that good stuff.
My name is Camden Harper, and I'm a student at Holly Hill. I've been a student at Holly Hill for 6 years. The reason I love Holly Hill is because the teachers are so welcoming and make us feel safe. One subject in school that we're learning about is fractions. I like fractions because they're a little hard, but they give me a challenge. What I want to do in my future, I want to go to Alabama for college, and I want to get drafted in the NFL.
So just like Mackenzie, Cam's a great example of everything you'd want a student to be. Works hard, takes care of others, leads the bus line out the door at the end of the day. Just they're great kids. So thanks for being here, buddy.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
Well, and while we still have Mrs. Minor in the room, she's in a situation where she co-teaches in a classroom with Mrs. Nine. So they have the fifth graders in a room that has a wall that's removed in the middle, and they co-teach together. And so always you go in seeing teachers cooperating with one another, students cooperating with one another, and creating some really challenging work like fractions. And I know Mrs. Minor was probably very happy to hear her talk about writing and know that she's passionate about writing. So is there anything, since you're here, is there anything that you would want to say about your students or your experience this year?
They show they work hard, they do what they're supposed to, and they make us proud of it.
Well, thank you so much. Again, we're just so proud of their ability to stand up here in front of adults, share their story. In West Clermont, we want to work really hard to know every kid's name, know their story, know their strengths, and know their needs so we can serve them well. And so this is just a way to showcase some of the best in our schools. So thank you, guys.
Can I comment?
Sure.
I'm so excited that you're co-teaching. My son, many moons ago, he's almost 28 now, he was in a co-teaching kindergarten, first grade class at Clough. And that was the absolute most amazing experience because he did kindergarten and first grade. And it was just, it creates a different environment and the kids collaborate and they just, it's an open classroom and they learn different skills and it's really neat. And it's fun that it's in 5th grade now too. So thank you for, yeah. So thank you for being an innovator.
And thanks, parents, for bringing your kids tonight. We
Yes,
appreciate
thank
it.
you, guys.
We
Yeah.
do.
Roll
It takes
Tide,
a
buddy.
village.
Roll Tide.
So we would like our students to go on a field trip. So Mrs. Preston, do you want to take over now so we can get them on the trip?
Sure. Good evening. We are requesting your approval this evening for the Summerside 5th grade group of students to take an overnight field trip to Camp Campbellgard. It's a YMCA camp. It's a trip that they've taken for many years now in a row. The trip will leave November 2nd and they'll return November 4th. For students who are unable to pay for the trip, they have fundraising, PTO helps to offset costs, all of those things are covered. And so that's never been a situation that has prevented anyone from attending in the past. We also make sure to include all students, and so we do have some students with disabilities who are part of our specialized programming who are also able to attend camp, and so it's really a great experience for all students. Any questions about that?
I would just like to say, if you ever run across a situation where you need financial help for one of the kids to go, please let us know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm always glad to help because people help me
Thank you so
when I
much
was
for that.
growing up.
I think most of the board feels the same way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you.
I have a question regarding timing of things. I always get nervous when we're within 2 weeks of approving the trip and parents being communicated that it's been approved and all of that good stuff. Is there ever a time that we're down to like a very narrow window that if tonight's meeting had been canceled or rescheduled, what would the kids have done?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because we're within 2 weeks of their departure.
I think it's something that, I think sometimes when, over the last few years, people have been out of the habit of approving field trips because we just haven't taken field trips at all since COVID. And so to be honest, I think the teachers have been planning and preparing and they just kind of like forgot the detail of sending that information along to us.
Got it.
So, so I had a friendly reminder to all of our building principals to make sure that those things get to us in a timely fashion. But I really do think it's a matter of like people just got out of the habit of that, because for sure we would never like want that to prevent anyone from being able to take this field trip. I will also say that in general, these particular overnight field trips are something that, you know, if I could wave a magic wand, I would love to see us have some like more uniformity around across our elementary schools. It's a really great experience for kids to have the opportunity to go overnight for camp. For some students, it's the first time that they've been away from home overnight. And not all of our schools organize their trips in that way, and so it's something that we've had some conversation about, and I would love to get to a place where all of our 5th grade students had an opportunity to take a trip similar to the one that we're seeking your approval for tonight, so that they all really can benefit. And it's one of those things that when you look back on your school experience, that like everybody could have kind of a common experience to remember and to have like fond memories associated with that. So
Yeah, in the years past, there's been 2 different camp locations.
yeah, so Camp Campbellgard has like been one of them. Camp Kern has like usually been
And then some of
another.
them go for 2 overnights and some go for 1 overnight.
Yeah, and some
so
in the
there's
fall, some
inconsistency.
more in the
Yeah.
spring. Like it has, and there are various reasons for all of that. But that is something that we're looking to kind of bring, like I said, some consistency of experience for students together. So it takes some planning and preparation to like make that happen, but we're working on that. Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, and I would say another emergency situation is we could call an emergency meeting, like if it was really bad and we were
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
be disappointing and it was just something that we wanted to see through, that is an option for us.
Well, we have another meeting before this, it'll just be a couple days.
Don't pack your bags quick.
Right, exactly.
No, it just makes us look sloppy when we're having to call an emergency meeting for
Yeah.
a routine
Yeah,
activity.
yeah, absolutely. Okay,
Could
so.
you just pass along to Mrs. Finke that the board really appreciates all the hard work with this?
Absolutely.
I'm
It
a firm
does.
believer in student travel, even if it's a day or two.
Yeah, and there is a lot of, I appreciate you bringing that up, there is a lot of preparation and planning on the part of all of our staff that works to make it happen for kids, including their time.
Well, I was gonna
you know,
mention,
spent.
both of my children went through Summerside and went to camp, and those teachers come back from camp exhausted.
Yeah,
Because I don't think
absolutely.
that they sleep a minute.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's with one eye open the whole time.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
their efforts through that is greatly appreciated.
Yeah, very much so. So, so we're requesting your approval of this overnight field trip to Camp Camelgard for Summerside this evening.
You've heard the recommendations, or a motion? Okay.
I'll second it.
Gotta go faster.
I know, right?
Any discussion? Mr. Romano?
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
Mr. Patton,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
5 yes.
Thank you.
So up next, we have a long-awaited presentation around middle school start time. This has been a long-term project worked on by many, many people, namely the Citizens Advisory Commission, who was tasked by you guys, the board, last year to dig into the research to consider a different start time at the middle school and to analyze all of the impact of what a change would do. And so, as you all recall, in May, the CAC did recommend that what was best for our students is that we push back the time. And from there, you guys tasked us to get into the weeds, to get into the details. Feasibility, beyond the feasibility study we had already done, to go deeper, to look at traffic study, to look at the specific routing and what all the costs associated with and what the ripple effect to both private schools as well as our own elementary and high schools could be. So Chuck and Mike have put together a really phenomenal presentation tonight with the help of the traffic study team and Peterman. We also have some guests here tonight from Peterman, so we want to welcome you guys and thank you. And hopefully this will be an enriching time. It's definitely one of those moments where you learn a lot about a district in a project like this. So Chuck, take it away.
Before I start that, I want to, Jessica said it, but I did run all of the documents with the Duke project by our construction attorney. He deals with utility companies, and he talked with Jessica, with Duke's attorney, so they changed the document a very little bit, so we're good to go. I'm going to give Dan the documents. I'm done with it. Dan can take over after this.
Ready to pass me off, was he?
So this project is truly a team effort. Mike and I and Brad and Brian spent a lot of hours on the phone and meetings putting this together. We got a lot of data in a pretty short period of time. We ran it by the cabinet twice and got questions we couldn't answer in cabinet. Thanks, Ellie. And we deferred back to Peterman. They've done a great job. So what we're going to go through here is truly a team effort. And I'm really proud of it. I think we're all proud of it because it truly does, I think, address all of the questions that could possibly be asked by the community or the board concerning, not dilemma, but concerning the proposal of a later start time. However, if you do have questions, Mike and I are here obviously, and so are the two experts from Peterman. So they would be happy to take your questions once I'm through with my presentation if you do have, and I suspect you probably will. So let's begin. All right, Dan.
right, we're finished.
So what did you think?
That was great.
You check,
Just not a lot of words in the presentation.
It's osmosis.
Did you say
Try
less
a new
is more?
style. Less is more.
Try that again.
Your email's not working.
There you go.
There you
All right, cool, thank you. Just a little bit of history lesson that Mike and I put together. CAC recommendation from last year, they spoke to the board last spring. They met all last year with community and teachers. So you have a copy of this. So within that copy, there are, the CAC report is linked and also the CAC presentation for you. The CAC, just as a Reader's Digest view, the CAC carefully considered and researched, gathered, published by the 5 groups listed there. There was also a consensus of these organizations that later school start time could have a clear benefit to students. As part of the CAC research, they gathered information from the middle schools, surveyed the athletic conference, similar districts as determined by the Ohio Department of Education. The information gathered included start and dismissal time of those schools, total instructional time per day, academic performance data. And our middle school has the earliest start times of all the schools surveyed. Timeline in this process is CAC was in May. The Board of Education, I can't see it. Board of Education direction in June. Natasha asked us, and we did. We completed a traffic study in September. District communication has gone out with Mike, dripping information out on the dates 16th, 23rd, and 30th. On October 7th, Peterman proposal, we received a couple. We received one September 21st. The traffic study, which is very interesting. I'm anxious to get to that with the Kleininger Group. Kleininger Group does traffic studies for businesses, but more importantly, they do a lot of traffic studies for school districts. They did one for Wyoming when Mike was there. They did one for Reading when I was there also, so they're a known group. The cabinet meeting on October 3rd where we met and we discussed it and and some questions were interjected. Then we asked for another Peterman proposal, which it gave us on October 6th. And now here we are tonight on the 12th, and then next steps we'll discuss after this. So an overview is what we currently have. K through 8 busing, pre-K students in our district are transported with disabilities only. Limited high school buses, those are students with disabilities. All buses operated, of course, by Peterman. We currently have a 3-year contract. We have 3 school vans operated by district employees and obviously other contracted transportation services. We currently have 74 bus routes. 11 private schools are served within 30 minutes door to door, which that translates to 25 routes. There's 8 separate facilities serving students with disabilities, separate schools, public schools, 2 vocational schools, 9.3% of our district budget, which is approximately $8.1 million. It's a history lesson of, actually Ellie asked this question I thought was pretty good. And we asked Peterman and they did get us the data that they had, although they couldn't get us all of the data because some of it was old. But, 2010 and 2011, you can see grade levels of pre-K through 12, eligible rider count was 10,000 plus, 6,000 bus stops, bus count of 90 buses, miles per day, as listed there in the daily routes, 467 routes. Because of financial difficulties, Brian told me yesterday that there obviously was a study at that time, and the board recommended reducing budget from the high schools. So beginning in 2011, 2012, this is what the district had. Pre-K, eligible riders dropped to 3,700, bus stop count dropped to 1,900, bus count went from 90 routes to 45, miles per day also decreased, and the daily routes 467 to 149. So now we go to 2022-23. Pre-K-8, which I said before, eligible rider count, 7,200. Bus stop count, 3,396. Bus count of 74 buses. Miles per day, 5,800 miles. Daily routes, 386. So we were at 90, this district was at 90 at one point, dropped to 45. Now we're back up to 74. And I believe last year, there were 2 routes added for preschool routes. We were at 72, 74 maxed out last spring.
Hey Chuck, real quick, Brian, how
Yep.
many homeless students do we transport?
There's about 6 or 7.
So those are 6 other routes each day?
Yes.
This is kind of by the numbers. This is our current situation. And you have the report, it's kind of difficult to see, but West Clermont Middle School, the times are here, 7 a.m. and arrival time is 6:45. Clough Pike and Amelia are early elementaries, 8:20. And then the high school special ed, 7:45, and then the other elementaries at 9:20. What you see at the bottom of the chart are tiers. So a tier amounts to routes. And we have 3 tiers because we have a middle school route early in the morning. We have 2 elementary routes, 2 elementary, early elementaries. And then we have the rest of the elementaries, and then including parochial schools and private schools. So that's 3 tiers. So that's an important thing to remember when we go through these projects. Anything else about the tiers, 3 tiers? Okay, Peterman's proposal number 1. From cabinet meeting, I can't really recall the date, but it was early fall. We asked Peterman to examine an 8:30 start time for the middle school. So they did, and here's the results of that. As a result of moving the middle school to an 8:30 start time, you would need to move to a 2-tier system from a 3-tier system. An increase of 34 buses to 108 buses. Total cost, 3.2 to 3.5 million, 10% diesel cost. So,
That's additional to what we already are under contract.
yeah, it's an addition. So what I'm going to do is go through all these proposals. Then at the end, or midway through, there's concerns, good and bad, and then we'll get to the questions. So let me just go through this now, and we'll get to that. Proposal number 2. This came from Peterman on the heels of this proposal. They said that they could drop students off change the drop-off time from 7 a.m. or 6:45 a.m. to 7 to 7:15 a.m. That would mean a 7:20 a.m. start time approximately for the middle school. However, this proposal, we would keep the middle school dismissal time at 2:15. The reason this proposal was attractive at first was because there was no cost to the district. It was simply changing by a 15-minute time span, middle school drop-off and start time. So it was attractive at first, but as we go through this, you'll see it became less attractive pretty quick. All right, going back to proposal number 1, you may have some questions for Peterman here. This also shows what they did with their first proposal, 8:30 start time. Middle school 8:30, early elementaries were at 7:40 a.m. then, and arrival time is 7:20, dismissed at 3, and again, the tiers below. However, here's tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So the numbers above represent buses, right?
Correct.
So there's 30 buses on tier 1, 87 tier 2, and 62 tier 3 buses. So again, we're dealing with these 3-tier systems. Anything else you want to add to this, Brian or Brian?
Well, you're saying 3-tier, but it's actually a 2-tier system. The times are in 3 buckets. Is that correct, Chuck?
Correct. There's no 1-tier in this proposal, right?
There are buses that have, they're single tiered, but those are the fewer.
Yeah, okay. So there's 2-tier and 3-tier and a bus with 1 tier here. All right, the numbers for proposal number 3. Change the entire district by 15 minutes. It means move everything back 15 minutes. Drop-off times, start times, and dismissal times. All the building drop-off times will be 15 minutes later in the AM and PM. No additional contract price for the district. Again, it was, on the surface, it was attractive. Peterman proposal number 4 was an 8:30 start time. Elementary and middle school pickup and drop-off times would adjust. This caused an increase of 22 buses. So we go from 74 to 96 buses. Total cost on this proposal, $2.2 to $2.5 million increase, and then 10% diesel. So this was their last proposal. And this is proposal 4 in a graphic form. So with proposal 4, it was a mixture of a 3-tier, 2-tier, and 1-tier system, which there'll be a significant impact on that in a moment.
So Chuck, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Why was the 8 AM start time not researched? Because that was the recommendation of the CAC.
I think we went through, this time span was anything between 8 and 8:30, is that right? How we kind of, Versatrans did
Our
that?
direction was, what we went with was
You're on.
8:30 is what we went with. That was our number.
But the answer to that, though, correct me if I'm wrong, anywhere between 8 and 8:30 is the same answer. So
Okay.
this is just a
Yeah.
number.
Correct.
Okay, okay,
That's why, so.
It didn't,
It wasn't just to go against that recommendation, that's the number
okay.
they
No, I just was, yeah.
it wouldn't have changed anything.
Okay,
So we just went with the latest start time
Okay.
possible. At the traffic study that I referenced earlier is also in your handout. The way Kleiningers, well, first of all, Kleiningers did traffic counts on Clough, Buxton Road, Amelia Olive Branch Road, 2 big intersections, the biggest intersection being Buxton and Clough Pike. So they did traffic counts there at various times of the day. So a rating for traffic studies, A through D, which you'll see, A through D is acceptable, E is borderline, F is unacceptable for a traffic pattern. And the most telling thing in their report was this sentence: later start times are expected to result higher overall traffic delays at Buxton and Clough Pike. And you'll see it right here. Our existing times are here. So we're at D's and E's, which D is good, E is kind of flirting with disaster. But that's where we are currently. Any other change, any change with all these proposals resulted in drastic changes in traffic counts. In the Schedule 1, there's an F and an E. In Schedule 2, there's 2 Fs. And then in Schedule 3, there's 2 E's, and it's across the board like that. What they do is they study the wait time of cars in the intersection. So currently, we're at 45.0 wait time in the AM, and in the PM, 55.8. If we change the time at all, it jumps dramatically. 76.6 in the morning and 75.0 in the afternoon, and Schedule 2 is really bad. That's over 100 minutes or 100 seconds. And then you go 79, 77, and 65. And Mike and I met with the rep from Kleininger, and he said, when you start approaching high 70s, then that can impact the township or the county. And then they probably would get involved in that, because now you're really impacting traffic flow. So the traffic study was comprehensive and I think eye-opening in many cases for that particular intersection. Obviously, the big reason is 2-lane road, and we're right there by the high school. Middle school and high school are right there.
So if you take the start time in Schedule 1 and the end time in Schedule 2, that's going to be the proposal 8:30 and 3:15. Does that make sense?
Yeah, correct.
So
Thanks. Okay, now the challenges. So I might need a little help on this because we were all involved in it. So Peterman proposal number one, 8:30 start time. This is the most expensive, 3.5 million. This had the most buses, 108 buses. So we would need Dan's gonna get to the financial report here in a minute, but it was 10.5 million over the next 3 years. Big thing is we need 11 additional parking spaces where we have space for 97 buses right now,
Correct.
but they also account for 15% over that for broken buses.
Up to 15%, yes.
Up to 15%. So we'd be short spaces. We would need additional employee and parking. Just the fact of getting 34 buses could be problematic. 35 buses would be on tier 1, 5 buses on tier 3. And here's a problem with the tiers. Moving to a 2-tier system could cause bus driver shortages for daily and event routes. So when you change from a 3-tier system, which we have, and go to a 1 or a 2-tier system, you will cause employee problems. You will lose employees. King's High School, who's a Peterman school, did that. I talked to them, and they've still not recovered. They're still advertising for drivers. So would you mind explaining why that occurs from a 3 to a 2?
It's because they turn into part-time employees instead of full-time, correct?
It diminishes their hours. I mean, most of our average driver now is a little over 6 hours, and I estimated using this scenario, they would probably lose anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half on average. The other thing that creates, because of the way our labor contract is struck, the benefits are based on an average of 6 hours per day. You fall below, so now I've lost time, and now my benefit cost has gone up. So it's kind of the arrows going in opposite directions.
So it would impact the number of bus drivers we'd have, or we would lose bus drivers.
Can
So
you talk
is-
about any kind of shortage that we're having now, of what the challenges are with drivers?
You know all the districts.
Well, I mean, overarching, I mean,
And we
it's,
hear about it.
it's a nationwide
Yeah.
problem. I know Mason's short drivers. I mean, we're not exclusive. I think here, our sub pool, I mean, Brian we're 6. We probably like to double that, but we're still at 6. So that puts us kind of in a better position than some. I think that we've been very fortunate. I think we've worked it very hard. But I mean, this is, in all my almost nearly 30 years in this industry, I've not seen this level of just the difficulty in getting a part-time, and these are part-time jobs. I mean, and getting those folks that want to do it, it's been tough.
Thanks. Okay,
Jim,
proposal.
did you have a
Yeah,
question?
so that would mean that in a perfect situation, you would still be short drivers, you think? And just the current situation would make that worse?
Well, I think that if we go with this proposal, the challenge we still need to overcome is how do we address that? You know, now you're going to work less hours, and you're going to have to pay more for insurance. And candidly, I mean, if you look around, it's all the industries and some of the bonuses they're hiring. I mean, things have come out of the woodwork. Our fear is not only finding those new people, but replacing the folks that would leave because they're going to say, now I can go to, stay in the industry, another district, or I can just get out of the industry altogether and go drive dump truck or delivery truck or something of that sort.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, the next proposal was proposal 2. This was simply changing the drop-off time, start time of the middle school by approximately 15 minutes. So I asked Tracy Ray, the principal at the middle school, to meet, could she absorb 15-minute loss in her master schedule? She met with the administrative team in the middle school, and they could not. There's no gain for them to do that. And so just to save 15 minutes or have a 15-minute later starting time, or even 20-minute later starting time, was not worth the loss of academic time in their master schedule. Proposal 3, shift all buildings by 20 minutes. Move everything. Again, no cost to the district. But the problem is elementary students will be getting home at 5:15 or later for some routes. So it's a problem there.
Not to mention the start time at later than 9:30 would be problematic for working parents.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, and their extracurricular activities, I mean,
Yeah.
practices start at 5:30. Yeah, some of them start at 4:30.
Chuck, if I could.
Yeah, go.
One other item that is not listed there is the 11 private and parochial schools that would service. This is all conditioned on they all fall in line or willing to do that as well. Because any of them say no, it's potential fly in the ointment, and I can't quantify it for it because there's so many different hyperbolas, depending on who said no.
I talked to all the private schools last year when we were going through this with the CAC and told them what we were doing, discussing. And obviously, they were all said, well, okay, just let us know. Well, I haven't let them know anything because we haven't decided anything. So on the surface, they said, thanks for the information, but nobody said, oh yeah, just let's do it. All right, proposal 4. This proposal came about after we had our last cabinet meeting, and there were some other questions come up. So the cost, 2.2 to 2.5 million. It's an increase, 7.5 million over 3 years. We may need additional bus parking spaces. We would be. The max is 97 buses now, and if you adjust for 50% overage, we wouldn't have space. Additional employee parking, of course, we would have to have, Peterman would have to find 22 new buses. Proposal would cause a driver shortage again because of the tiers, moving from 3-tier to 2-tier to 1-tier. There would be an impact on the drivers. The route transition time is shorter, so meaning drop off and pick up at each building is a shorter time. So you could incur some problems with traffic or problems on the route. Whatever may happen would cause issues at the receiving or the giving school. 17 buses will be in Tier 1, 18 in Tier 3. Elementary pickup and drop-off times would be impacted. Increased traffic congestion on Bach Buxton Road and Clough Pike, and it impacts private school routes. So let me go back to the traffic. We didn't put it on every slide, but as I showed you in the traffic study, any time change will impact Bach Buxton and Clough Road intersection. So instructional time. Mike, you want to take us through this?
So what we did here was at the top is our current start time and end time. And then the second one was the September proposal, let's call it. And then in the third bucket there is the latest one we got last week. So what we did was we just looked at the start time and end time and what it would do to instructional minutes. So at the high school, there would not be any movement in the instructional minutes, which, as we know, we wouldn't be impacted. The elementaries would gain 40 to 50 minutes, depending on which proposal, but the middle school would lose 30 minutes of instruction. So, Ellie, do you want to talk a little bit, and Megan, do you want to talk a little bit about, there's some gains to that, obviously, getting back some of the instructional minutes that were lost.
Yeah, and so obviously, if there is a decrease in student instructional time, we wouldn't be decreasing the amount of time that teachers would be working. And so as a result, there would then be built-in time for teachers to have collaboration time each day, which is a significant advantage. Now, $2.2 million of an advantage, that's like a question to ask, obviously. And at the elementary school, one of the things, to walk down memory lane, at the same time that busing had to be cut and the district was faced with really challenging financial situation, when the elementary specials were cut, the amount of time at the elementary day was also cut. And so then now that specials have come back, that elementary and the length of their instructional day was never then increased. And so if you think about 45 minutes of time for art, music, PE, discovery has been added back, which we're grateful for, but the length of the school day for students was never increased. And so that's a challenge that we're currently faced with at the elementary level, is a desire to have more instructional time. And so this particular proposal, the October 6th proposal there, that last one, would be adding instructional time back to the elementary school day.
So that 45 minutes from, inserting the specials back in is actually taking 45 minutes out of their core classes.
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
would be getting that back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have we looked at possibly adding that time back in?
Well, that is what this last
I
proposal
mean,
would
without
do.
the other adjustments.
I think the challenges become like the same challenges that we're faced with transportation. It would require everything sort of having to change in order to be able to make that happen.
And so originally, when we went down this middle school path, we thought, well, if it's going to change, instead of haphazardly change, let's just change it altogether. So I think we will have to revisit that conversation regardless of, well, depending on this outcome, I guess.
Well, and that's
is
a
better
good
way to say
point
it.
too, like, when we, whatever we decide, if we would decide to adopt this, that's a big story point that, when, back in 2010, when we took, the transportation away, the specials away, we took 45 minutes away. Now your children are gonna get 45 minutes back that they have gotten all along.
Right. Yeah.
So,
And that is kind of a whole other topic. I was meeting with some elementary teachers today, and they were just asking, will we ever get the full diet of specials back? Because we did improve. We went from 12 days a month to they get 4 days a week, but it's still not 5, which is where it used to be. And I still think it's easy to get lost in all those nuances, and the cost associated with it, making all that happen.
So one of the questions that Chuck and I had your mind gets a little numb with all these numbers and everything. We asked Brian yesterday, well, what's the difference between the September proposal and the October proposal? And believe it or not, it's 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So the last proposal was give us your best opportunity to get us a later middle school start time and how that would affect the rest of the district. So that 5 or 10 minutes has an impact, both on time and finances.
Thanks. Here's a summary of what you just saw. It says the same thing we've discussed. Problem with the tiers is a significant problem because it will reduce employees. Cost, obviously, is an issue. And then the impact on the instructional day is an issue.
Can you go back to that, Chuck? Because
Yes, sir.
It didn't translate well. Wherever you see those green squares is an arrow.
Yeah.
So it's an increase of, obviously, the cost, traffic congestion, and I don't know why it didn't translate, but traffic, things like that. So just to clarify for you on the public.
Okay, next, Dan, you want to talk about your slides here?
Sure. So, one of the things that, actually in the beginning with the CAC that they had brought up was, which may have kind of halted some things in the beginning, was the cost factor. So how much would this cost if we did change the times? And I think the great thing the group did is kind of suspended that, just to come on a recommendation of what was best on that start time. But the finances is a factor with it. So what I did with the numbers that the team had put together, really there was the two options that had a financial impact to them, was go back and look at our 5-year forecast. And so we're kind of in between. We had the May forecast that the board approved and adopted. We are casting now the November forecast, which in next month, the board will be asked to approve that. We have a preliminary draft of that I used to cast these numbers against. But what I want to do is, before I get to putting those numbers against that, talk about some of the factors and trends that are really impacting that forecast. I would typically start with the revenues, but because of the way this story kind of unwinds, I'm going to start with the expenses first. And so what are the factors and trends that are impacting our expenses as of today? First, it's impacting everybody in this room and every business, and certainly the school district, is inflation. Inflation has taken off. Who knows where it's going to stop? If you even look at interest rates, those are rising sometimes almost weekly with that. So inflation is a factor on our budget. Our special education, we have told you this in the past, our enrollment is increasing, but just not only the enrollment is increasing, is the severity
Intensity.
of those special ed cases and things like that. So, which is increasing the cost to it. That is an impact on this year's budget, and it will be an impact as we go into the future. The group already talked about the workforce shortages. It has no prejudice to any industry. probably has no prejudice globally to anything that's going on. And you put across that in 2024, the last collective bargaining agreement we had a 3-year agreement. That really comes to conclusion June 30th of 2024, so we have to have consideration of that as we look at a 5-year casting. Our PI fund, our Permanent Improvement Fund, which is primarily for infrastructure and for equipment, it took a pretty good hit when we put the modulars into Merwin with it. There is a balance there, but if there was any catastrophe, okay, if something really happened, then we'd have to subsidize that with our operating funds to do that. Okay, and that has happened with this district in the past in order to do. So that's a consideration. The fifth thing is our enrollment. You know, go back a few months and we used to have open enrollment because when you look at our enrollment, anticipated enrollment growth, and you look at our capacity, our open enrollment shut down, okay? Modified shutdown, okay? With that, not totally, but we're looking at that. The reason for that really is that, not that we wanted to close the doors, but we need to make sure that we're providing seats for our West Clermont children, okay, to do that. So that is there. But when enrollment grows, there's an operating impact to it, there's a facility impact to it, okay? And then the sixth thing is, and I always try and keep this top of mind, is, you know, even though we passed the levy, even though we had additional funds from the property valuation increase in 2020, we still are spending in that low portion of the state. In 21, it was the low 6% of the state on spending, okay? It really is, yes, are we efficient? Yes. But are we going without some essential things on the instructional side within that classroom? Yes. Okay, so that's a consideration that we need to have. Having said all of that, I go to the revenue side of things, okay? Two primary sources of revenue for the school district are local property taxes and our state funding, okay? Local property taxes will somewhat be consistent unless two things happen. One, we pass a levy, or two, the property values increase. And normally in most school districts that are not at the 20 mil floor, we are at the 20 mil floor. House Bill 920 will kick in, so if there's a property valuation increase, the tax rate reduces and you really collect the same amount of money. Districts that are under the 20 mil floor, and that is a growing trend because of property value increases. Districts that are at the 20 mil floor, when there's a property value increase, the district does gain revenue on those 20 mils. The reason why I'm saying that is as we look at this and we look at the casting of the numbers, okay, in 2023, there is the triennial update, which is typically a percentage adder worked out between the county auditor and the State Department of Taxation, okay? Typically, that's not a major increase. When we go back and we look at what's going on around the state since post-COVID, since property values have been increasing, okay? When I look around the state, those increases are anywhere from 15 to the mid to upper 20% increases. I'm not saying that's what our county is going to do, but that is a consideration. Our property values, housing values have increased. This district is primarily residential property values. We do have some commercial industrial, but the primary source on property values is residential, okay, our homeowners to do that. What I'm saying there is the cast that you see built in and typical increases for triennial is about 5%. That's what I built in. It's not going to be 5%. I'm having conversations with the county auditor's office as to what that could be. They're looking at the numbers too now. So we're in conversations with that, and I think everybody, you know, there is no crystal ball on what can happen in the summer when they start looking at the sales values of what that can be. But we know it's going to be more than that, okay? So I say that because as you see the numbers, it's going to say, well, here's these negatives, but yet we could get more money in. What that is, I don't know. Second consideration on the revenues is the state funding. We are one of 300-plus districts that with the new state funding formula have a guarantee, which really means that if you go by the formula that the state approved to fund public education, K-12 public education, if we went strictly by that formula, we would receive less money, okay? We would receive, last year was $1 million because of some things that occurred in the formula, we would receive probably about $1.5 million less, okay? If they went by the formula strictly, if there were no guarantees. Our advocacy is to keep the guarantees in there so that we at least have that level of funding. On top of that advocacy, my advocacy is if you're going to put double-digit numbers in state funding for education, we should have a little bit more than just zero increase with that. Okay, so that's there too. But, okay, that's not our decision, right? That's the governor and the legislative decision on what to fund K-12 education. Okay?
And it is something that we've been meeting with our legislators about, making this issue very known.
We've been meeting with them, and as of a couple of weeks ago, through our association, there is a subcommittee that really is focusing on those provisions, those guarantee provisions within that state funding formula. It's being recognized. We were not silent on it, and as we get into this legislative era where the new biennium bill gets put together, we need to be a voice in that, to do that, and we will be a voice in with that. Okay, so we need to secure, those minimums to that. So there's expense trends and factors, there's revenue trends and factors with that.
Before you go into the details of the forecast, I just want to thank you for, we're pushing on you. We're pushing on Peterman, we're pushing on Kleininger, we're pushing on you to work faster than you're normally working with these topics. I know it's a November activity.
Yeah.
We were doing that not just for fun, but because if we didn't make a decision kind of in this window, it wouldn't give the Peterman the lead time that they need to do the hiring, the purchasing, the whatever that may have to occur. And so everyone's been really pushed and squeezed in this, and it is hard. It's hard enough as it is, but it's hard to even be a month earlier, so thank you.
Yeah, and so, and I appreciate that, thank you. And I appreciate the fact that with the cabinet, their heads really have shifted to, and you can see it in the presentation, where they just didn't give a one-year number, right? They knew that there's a 3 to 5 year impact of that, that's cumulative on it, okay? So I think everybody's taken in consideration that this isn't just a one-year number, or thinking 1 year, but we have to think into the future with it. Okay, so we'll get into more detail on the 5-year forecast. We have a finance committee meeting coming up next week, I believe, so we'll get more detail into it. But if we look at this, the top line here, it said projected unreserved fund balance June 30th. That's really the current draft forecast that will be presented in November. Those are not the finalized numbers. It's a draft with that. And so 23, we end the year with 14.3 million, 24, 12.6 million, 25, 8.8 million. We can conclude, and we had concluded in the past that, hey, we had promised the voters that we could extend, the last levy would go at least to 2024 with current level services. We are keeping those promises because of some increases, because of some management that the superintendent and the leadership team has had. With those top line numbers, we can extend that to 25, okay? That's there. So that's the top line numbers. You can see in 26, 27, those balances start to decrease, okay? All right, actually, the balances start to decrease from 23 to 24, which means that at that point in time in 24, our expenses are starting to exceed our revenues, okay? That's there. Again, I'm just going to state, okay? With the triennial update was only built in at 5%. And the reason is that's traditionally what's been there. I do want to come to some consensus with the county auditor's office of what that possibility of that is. And it probably is going to be a range, and then I'll strike the difference on that. Okay, that will add dollar amounts to that, but it won't be significant dollar amounts. Okay, to it. Proposal 1. That is where, and I did to the fact that, as the superintendent said, there needs to be a lead time to this to operationalize things, to get the staff, get buses, things in order. I perceive that that's really even pushing it to start it next school year, to do it. That's tough to do. but I looked at casting that for next school year. So the annual cost is 3.5 million. I just took you know, what the average inflation rate is, and over, you know, 50 years, it's 3%. So if I increase that by 3%, it goes from 3.5 in 2024, 3.6 in 2025, 3.7 in 26. What you really have to consider is what's the cumulative increase that would go against any one-year balance. So costs rise from 3.5 to 7.1 to 10.8 through 26, okay? If you adjust those cash balances, okay, you see that our balances quickly deteriorate in 2025, okay? That's because the two-year cost of $7.1 million comes off that available balance, and we're down to under 2 million, okay? In 2026, it puts us into a deficit, okay? A pretty significant deficit to do that. If we go with proposal 4, which is a reduced amount, I took the 2.5, went through the same scenario of a 3% inflationary rate. The numbers, again, a little bit less, but we're into a significant deficit in 2026, 5.4 million. We have a little bit more balance, which, by the way, if, you know, by that time, I think it's a $93 or $96 million expense budget. Your treasurer probably will have sleepless nights, you know, with a projected $3.8 million balance on a $96 million budget, okay, to do that. So, but those are the numbers, the way they shake out.
And that's because $12 million is really what we need to operate for 2 months.
Correct.
So like that equivalency, I think, is
Yeah,
always
so
eye-opening.
So if you look at that last one, yeah, are we safe in 2024 with 10 million? But that would mean that we're, you know, we're coming back, and then it assumes the state isn't gonna give us any more money because we're under a guarantee to $1.5 million.
Yeah.
Okay. The other pressure, and I forgot to say this, as our property values go up, the state basically is saying, hey, you're a wealthier school district, we're not gonna give you any more money. Okay, so as those property values go up, the state formula works against us and says, okay, we're gonna give you less money if you're under the formula to do that, okay? So, that's the financial picture as we go through this. Again, you know, the numbers will change because it's a draft. And 2 is there will be more funds, not significantly more, because of that triennial update to do that, okay?
So if
Questions on that?
If I'm reading that correctly, we had told our community that we would not be needing a levy before 2026, to pass in 2026, to start collecting at the end of 26, beginning of 27.
It was 20, when I read it,
Well,
was 20.
24 is what we said during the campaign.
Yeah.
We were saying with the funds, the additional valuation changes, as well as the ESSER funding, we were able to stretch beyond 24.
Got it.
So,
Yeah.
But now it looks like we would need to collect starting late 2025, beginning of 26
Yeah,
at the
in
latest.
2025. Yeah, now, when the valuation increases come in,
That might help.
if we don't, so forget the proposals, I think that's what you're talking about. So if you suspend the proposals, okay, and just look at that top line, where there's a valuation increase that comes in above the 5%, those numbers increase, and 2026 will look a little bit different. Because we start collecting the triennial update numbers in January of 24.
Got it.
So we get a half a year in 24, full in 25,
Got it.
okay, to do that.
In my mind, I'm thinking that if we are not successful in our first trial levy,
Right.
we don't have the money. The first thing that we always cut is transportation, because
Yeah. And-
it doesn't impact instruction, and where are we at then?
So you must have been, you know, it must have been reflective in my eyes, because the biggest thing that I wrote down here is don't forget to talk about sustainability, which is what you just said. You don't want to add things that eventually you have to cut, okay? And so that's why when we went with our Upward and Onward program, we were very diligent about saying, okay, we're not going to add things to the general fund that we can't sustain. Okay, so that is something that we've consistently done. That's a consideration there. Bottom line, though, because I don't think we're trying to make this a financial decision. When I go back to the slide on the factors, okay? There's a lot of priorities. When you look at the factors of 1 through 6, do we control any of those? We don't control inflation. We don't control who moves into the district or what the needs are of those students, okay? At most of any of those, we respond to those, okay? How best can we respond to those, okay? But those really speak of priorities, okay? What we have to do, what we have to make decisions on. Other questions?
I'm trying to get to the slide, but I look at, it's the slide that talks about, okay, our 2022, 2023, it's the history slide about where, you know, we have 7,200 eligible riders, but we have about half utilizing right now. And if moving to proposal 4, which is the most favorable, and you're bumping, you know, you're pushing up 2 elementary schools to a 7:30 start time, is that going to decrease our numbers of bus utilizers because mom and dad are just gonna drop them off on their way to work? And then, you know, I mean, again, you know, are we paying for a resource that, we're paying for a resource now that's being underutilized, why? And number 2, do we dump more money into a resource that is gonna be continually underutilized?
I think those numbers where it said 7,200 was eligible riders. That's not including those that are being, you know, taken to school by their parents.
Well,
Chuck,
no,
will you go
that,
back to that slide?
yeah, that's, no, there's 7,200 eligible, but there's only 3,300, 3,400 actually riding the bus.
Bus stop riders, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
That's not exactly how you interpret that. That's basically what that is. 3396 is how many bus stops we have, how many stops we have.
bus
That
stops.
is, we might have 10 kids at one stop.
Yeah.
That's just
Okay.
the bus stops in the district.
so do we have a head count of how many butts and seats on a bus?
That's what the 7219 is,
Every day?
correct.
But that's not necessarily probably true, because depending on, you know, where the child's staying the night, mom, dad, depending on, you know, it's gonna be a fluctuating number
Yeah,
every
it's a
day.
moving number,
It's-
for
yeah.
sure. And if it's in football season and you need to save it for practice or not, I mean, there's
Yeah.
factors like that. We do have some car rider numbers that give a sense of how many car riders we have per school. So I'll just kind of hit those. The total is 1,013. So Amelia, 115, Clough, 135, Holly Hill, 139, Merwin, 129, Summerside, 185, WT, 175, and Willowville, 135. Does this include the preschools in here?
I'm not sure about the preschools, to be honest. So what that was is like the car rider tags that Lisa, let's say, gives out. There was 185 of them. Is that correct, Lisa?
Correct.
Or more now, because this is about a month old.
Correct. But those students still have a reserved seat on a school bus, right?
I mean,
They have
I
to,
mean, have we
yeah.
ever surveyed our families in the district about why they're not using the bus service that,
Not since I've been here.
I mean, because honestly, it's like you sit, I mean, I've been to some of this elementary, it's craziness. I mean, we're paying for transportation and people aren't using it, but then when they get to high school, then they complain about it because we don't have it, and it's like,
I know at the middle school at the time, a lot of the parents' comments were that if they're already gonna drop off at the high school, they might as well drop off at the middle school as well. That's why the middle school number was always high back in the day, because if they're already making one stop, they might as well just go right down the road and make the other stop. So that's why they don't use the bus
Yeah,
for
well,
middle school.
Well, another on top of that was the early start time, that the bus was picking them up at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And if I
Yeah.
just took them myself, they could get an extra
Yeah.
half hour sleep or so.
And so our middle school numbers,
About 325 car riders. What we do serve, we do ask, and when that's why the enrollment is so important, the re-enrollment. We do ask the question, are you gonna take the bus in the morning and the afternoon?
We didn't ask why.
We
but
don't ask
asked-
why.
I mean, I know, like, just from talking to my neighbors, it's like, well, they don't want, little Johnny, who's a new kindergartner, on the bus with fifth graders because they're gonna learn bad things. It's like, okay, well, that's great, but
Well, I think these kinds of studies and getting into these details is so important because there are always competing priorities. And it is, are we maximizing our resources and what is best? And we all are tasked with answering those questions. And so, in our minds right now, financially, there's no way that we could bring any of these proposals forward that require a change, even though we all fully believe that it needs to change. We are not positioned right now financially to recommend that to you guys. And what we want to do, though, is to continue the work. We've got the town hall sessions. We talk about 5 main priorities, one being facilities. And when you want to talk about money, talk about facilities. He already mentioned the modular today at Merwin. We want to talk about configuration of our school district. What is the best design and purpose for this school district? Do we need to offer online options because we have some people who are leaving our district to hit an online option? Do we need that more wide scale than we currently have it? And what is the best configuration of the middle school, of pre-K, where the preschooler should be? There's lots to look at there. We have educational programming that we want to look at. Are we offering everything that our students need to be future ready? And we have the state safety and well-being of our staff and students that we're prioritizing. I feel like I'm leaving out one. Did I? Okay. Transportation. That's what it is. I'm like, I know there's a 5th one. It's transportation. And so we are having some runway time here to be able to really do a deep dive on all of these priorities and kind of look up them up against each other, as opposed to doing things piecemeal and then having to recover from a decision that had that long-term impact. So we fully believe that the right thing to do for the middle school is to change that start time. We just don't have a solution that is something that we can afford right now. And we were hopeful that we would be able to muster up something, that there was going to be some win, and there just aren't advantages in what we've been able to find so far.
well, and it sounds like that, the possibilities where there wasn't a financial impact, that it was going to be too detrimental
It
to.
did, the losses are not, they don't outweigh the gains.
Right.
And so we weighed that out, thinking that, well, gosh, if we could just get something, because we didn't want to be all or nothing thinking, but it just didn't bring the advantage that would, we think, solve the challenge that we were solving for.
Well, and it's very insightful hearing Dr. Ray's input on this, because she wasn't here last year when we started, and she wasn't included in the CAC conversation. So for her to be able to give kind of an unbiased opinion about it is very insightful to, I'm
Yeah,
glad that
and-
she felt comfortable and confident in her recommendation.
And they've been doing a deep dive in their schedule, because it's not a perfect schedule. They did make some improvements, but there's still some internal operational things that make it not as cohesive as we want it to be. And so it again goes back to, like, what is the best configuration of that school? What's the best way to utilize the staff, the space? Is that space the best for the middle schoolers? Because we do have clear challenges there that are not faced anywhere else, just based on the footprint of the building. And the time that they start. So we are fully behind the recommendation of the CAC. Like, that has not wavered whatsoever. But we have not been able to bust through a solution. We have solutions on the table, but none that outweigh other priorities that exist in our district.
Yeah, because couldn't this, I'm just thinking out loud here, but could this not also frustrate people at the high school level as well? If we're adding additional money here, still not including anything with the high school?
Yeah. Yeah.
Regardless if they would use it or not, but
Yeah.
it's,
And that was something that did come up in the CAC. People were, very worried about that. They were almost worried to make the recommendation. They believed that that's what it should be, but they were afraid to make it A, for that reason, and B, for knowing that there's financial impacts. And so we had to try to just wipe that away and say, let's look at what is best for kids, and always be shooting for that, and not settling in our thinking process.
And to piggyback with what you said about the CAC, again, I attended a couple of those meetings, and they really did a great job. I mean,
They did.
This was, they really put a lot of research into this, and, I mean,
They were incredible.
they did a great job. Like,
I know, we
still
really wanted to
continue-
deliver for them. I mean, we've worked so hard, and it's just, the math is not working out.
Yeah.
And we did this study several years ago for the same reason. I was hoping that we would have a different outcome this time.
I know, we
With
were
the
just-
statistics and everything, because this is something that we've known as a problem. I mean, we acknowledge it as a parent, as a school board member, as a community member. I was hopeful there'd be a different outcome.
And I just, I mean, I go back to the town halls and plugging those. I really do think there could be a creative solution out there that we're not thinking about in how we can figure as a school district, you know, what the future might be that could solve some of these things. I don't have the magic idea, the magic bullet, but I think in working together, we can come up with something that could really be win-win-win all around. So we're going to keep pressing forward with that process and just keep putting our needs out there and the challenges out there so that everyone's dealing with the same set of information.
Is this some sort of a presentation that, you know, that we could look at taking to like to OSBA and collaborating with some of the other districts and, you know, seeing if there's, you know, other districts who have done, you know, that they've done something like this and maybe figure out, you know, how did you tackle the problem and how were you you know, the ones that were successful and, you know, just.
Yes. Well, I know for this particular OSBA year, the
Like,
call for
yeah.
proposals are already out.
Yeah,
So
but
Dan
like
and
in
I,
the future.
yeah, Dan and I will be presenting this year together on our staff wellness initiatives. And so we will get an opportunity there. And I always look, every time I've been in Clovis twice this month, or I think it's this month, I don't know, it's all a blur to me. But just always looking for the network to figure out, like, how are you guys doing it? So we are reaching out, always looking for best practice. And Peterman, I know, did that too, just as they did their studies, just knowing like what's working well in other districts. And so I do think districts we're in a season in education where we do need to not work in silos, to really lean into each other and look for some ideas that are really out of the box, maybe even collaborating as districts, coordinating things that we've never imagined doing before. Because we're not gonna make it at this rate, just expecting that people are just gonna show up and the shortages in the universities of even kids in seats to become educators are 40% down. Like, people aren't gonna magically appear. We're going to have to be really inventive with how we staff, how we recruit, and how we keep people here, so.
Brian and Brad, quick question is, I'll put you on the spot a bit, but what's more, like, are comparable districts, are they triple tier? Or is that your ultimate goal is to be a triple tier?
I think our goal is your needs.
Right.
I mean, realistically, the more tiers you have, the more efficient, you know, from a costing standpoint. I mean, if you could be quad, you know, there's some districts that are even quad.
Really?
You know, they have, similar like your AB elementaries, they have that, you know, they'll do high school, middle school, and then an AB schedule for the elementaries. It requires less equipment. The more tiers we have, the less equipment we need. The fewer tiers, I mean, if you went to a single tier,
Oh, boy.
we'd need a lot.
Right.
Do you find that most of I'm just curious, and you may not know, do you find that most of those districts are like grade level configured districts as opposed to neighborhood schools, where they would have like an early childhood center and then like maybe an elementary and then an intermediate and then as opposed to schools within like
Neighborhoods.
K-5 within
You know, I'm not really qualified to, I mean, I think Lakota where I live, I mean, I think Lakota has something to the effect you're talking. And I think that, I mean, it's also a district where, you know, we're running 200 buses for them. So, I mean, it's hard for me to remember, I'm sorry.
It's probably the square mileage plus the configuration.
I think I'll tell one, we do Talawanda, we run out of time before we ever run out of seats because it's a 150 square mile district. I mean, your closest neighbor may be 5 miles away.
And the density, so.
Thinking outside the box, when we eliminated busing altogether, it was a huge inconvenience. But people carpooled, they worked together to make it work. I wonder if we could do, or if it would be worth our while to do a thought exchange with parents. Just say if we eliminated busing for 6, 7, and 8, because the cost is counterproductive. The time frame a late start, the whatever's, doesn't work, but if we could postpone that arrival till 8:15 or 8:30, would you be able to transport your child to and from? Because that could solve the problem
Without the transportation
without the
challenge.
additional expense to the district. I mean, how many parents would support that? There could be 5, and, 10,000 against. I mean, I'm just trying to think outside the box on how we can.
Yeah.
But I think you're going the opposite direction of what we're trying to do. I mean, because the school district has already done away with the busing at one point, and that we were able to bring that back. I mean, at one point.
No, I'm saying,
So you were just saying, like, if it's
in lieu of-
worth it to people to have a later start time is more important than having
Just to see
somebody
what their
come
ideas
by.
are.
Yeah, just a thought exchange. Would you be willing to transport your student to and from?
If it's more important for you for them to come later.
Later, okay.
In
Than
exchange
just to
for
then have a
arriving
bus
later.
come by your house at an
Yeah.
earlier time to pick them up, because that's what
Because the
plan
issues
is.
are, we need more buses, we need more parking, we need more staff. All of those could be eliminated if that was an option.
I mean, if the monetary concerns relate in front of them too,
Yeah.
like, we promised you this with what we have now, but
Yeah.
you guys want other things as well. You want later starts, but that would come with a cost.
Yeah, I mean, just, in my thought was
Yeah,
just
brainstorming type of thing.
brainstorming and just
Yeah.
asking the question. And if everybody come back and says, no, we don't support it,
What,
we at
what's your
least-
biggest priority? And that's really what this whole
Yeah.
process is all about, is like, there's all kinds of competing priorities, what matters most to you.
Yeah.
So I think it could definitely be, could be reviewed.
Would we be able, like, I mean, just this, hypothetically say people supported it, are we allowed to do that? Because don't we have to transport K-8?
Yes.
Yes, you have to transport K through 8. It's a
Yeah.
law. You have to do
Yeah, I
that.
thought
You have to
that was
offer
the
that
law.
service.
You can't split up, I'm sorry, I didn't want to stop your fault, but you can't say, you can't pick out like the middle school and say, we're not going to transport, we'll transport. It's K through 8.
So the rule applies
Oh, I
regardless
didn't
of your
know that.
kindergarten or
I thought you could
Eighth grade.
carve
But,
that.
but we could,
Oh, I
Not
thought
9
you
through
could
12
carve
is
that.
your
The
grades that
middle
you can.
column is what we are
yeah,
required to
but
do.
we could reduce the
We could go back
radius
to
like
that.
we did
But
back
that
in
wouldn't change the
2000.
time then.
2-mile radius.
Yeah,
2 miles from the school.
yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering if there's something, some
But then
benefit
if
out
we
of
did that, we would have to apply that K through 8. We couldn't just apply that.
You can't do 6,
Yeah.
7, 8.
I'm just trying, I'm wondering if we think.
And no bad idea to brainstorm.
I know.
Conversations, didn't we also realize that moving the middle school to the 2-mile minimum wouldn't really impact that many riders anyway?
Right.
Because they're so diverse.
Yeah.
That's why you
Yeah.
have to
They're
pick
so
a larger
far
number.
apart.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to pick a larger number, but
Yeah,
you
you're
wouldn't
right.
want to do
I
that
think
for
we
the
did rule
elementary.
that.
I mean, I think by 2 miles is by law.
That's the
right?
farthest.
That's the farthest you can go, so it wouldn't be that much of an impact.
Yeah.
anyway.
At one point, that's the way it was already, was at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
was-
no busing,
2000.
2
I
mile
was,
radius.
I
and
was
then-
so excited for
No,
their
I was-
option that I.
You also have to
wasn't
factor in that we had Glen Estee and Amelia at that time, right? So the kids were, we would have more riders.
No, this was at West Hunt, this was the merge. When the merge took over, we had no,
No,
No.
no.
you are correct.
What the
That was
survey
Lake
does,
Amelia.
though,
It's
is
2011.
help you identify priority.
Yes.
I think that's exactly what.
We just had a lot of.
Yeah, what
she
matters
knows is
most.
What the law says.
Yeah.
What's important to people.
Yeah, but if they say that, that we would transport, that still doesn't help us for
It
the
doesn't.
few that say
Yeah.
I couldn't or I'm not able to.
Right.
Sorry.
Because as a parent, you're gonna say, I'm gonna say I need a bus just in case that one day a week that,
Yeah.
I have to go out of
Yeah.
town or something like
Or
that.
weather's bad.
My son or daughter can get on a bus, right?
Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
we do that,
It's-
sorry.
I tried.
It's tough.
You
I
would.
know, it is,
Yeah, you
thank
would.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have,
Well, we need to keep thinking.
we do need to
know.
keep thinking and keep understanding what matters most to people, so that's,
Thank you for being here to clarify that. No,
yeah, because I was all swept
seriously.
away. Thank you.
Way to go.
Okay, so at this point, unless you as a board decide that you want for us to pick one of these and recommend them to you, I don't know, if you give me any kind of feedback throughout the week that you're wanting to see something different out of this work at this time, I'll take that feedback from you. But it was our plan now to not come with a recommendation in October as planned earlier. And again, this was all in a tight timeline so that we could give Peterman as much lead time as possible. And that's just not necessarily at this time. We also plan, unless I get feedback from you guys otherwise, to provide some communication to our families. The team has done a really good job making sure people knew that tonight we were talking about this, that we wanted to make sure people had something to say, that they would, have that forum. And especially the CAC members, as well as the middle school families and the early elementary, or the late elementary kiddos coming. And so we will follow up with a communication, bottom line, so. All right, superintendent comments, I guess, unless there's other questions or comments or direction for me? Okay. My comment, I know, good luck, Natasha. Okay, the comments are, really go back to the town hall. Our next one is October 20th at WT. We really want to fill that space up with lots of people. There's nothing better than seeing a multi-generational table, a student, a grandparent, a teacher, and a parent all sitting at the same table. It's very powerful. And I think it will be the change that will make the biggest difference in our district as we really work to change the culture and get everyone fully understanding the challenges that we have, that we face, and the future that we want to build for our kids. And so it's extremely important. So that's October 20th. And then the next one is, I'm gonna forget, it's November 17th. And that one will be at Merwin Elementary. And that will give everyone in the community also a chance to come in and see the design challenges specifically that we have at Merwin Elementary, can see the modulars, and just get a feel for, from the uniqueness. Because once you can be in Merwin and it looks great because our team works so hard. They are always looking at, little cosmetic changes they can make, and they work very hard to keep it clean and keep it moving. But then you walk into Summerside and you're like, wow. The difference that the students, the inequities, and the inadequate space. And so it's just going to be important for people to see. So that's what we have planned up. We did cancel the December 6th. We were worried about attendance in December, and we really do plan in this next round, we're going to do a whole second semester, new topic, new process. And there's going to be a series of them at each school. And so we want to make sure that we kind of give everyone a pause, let December be December, and we get geared up for that. And I think that will really help send us into our next level of decision making, and will help us tease out even more priorities from our community. So that's really my plug. I am extremely proud of our staff, the PD. The feedback that we've gotten from the professional development over the last couple of days has been some of the best that we've gotten. All the feedback that they give is now driving what's happening next, it's next Friday, right? Are you ready? Here it is, it's coming, ready or not. I was out and about in a couple buildings today, and just staff really just saying how much the fall break really made a difference to them, how they feel very energized and ready to tackle the world, and we'll hold on to that as long as we can. And we just appreciate the parents working with us in this calendar, because I do think the master calendar and how we spend our time can make a big difference to the overall impact of what we're able to offer and the wellness of our students and our staff. So that's it. Oh, Manufacturing Day. There's something going on right now. You want to talk? Will you say something about that?
Sure.
So that I don't leave out those details?
Natasha and Dan were at a chamber event in the summer, and we were able to make a connection with someone from TechSolve, which is TechSolve is a foundation or nonprofit organization in the Southwest Ohio area that basically is supporting small manufacturers to large manufacturers. So this grew kind of really quickly. To last week, there was VR equipment at the high school during parent-teacher conferences, so kids and parents could actually see what it would be like to be trained in a manufacturing plant. This week, tonight, I would say we had 15 from large ones from like Purina. They're just coming at us with gangbusters to like get in touch with our kids and things, to very small manufacturers as well. But all of our students, 9 through 12, had an opportunity to engage with 15 to 20 manufacturers, including the Oaks was there as well. So we're already brainstorming ideas of how we can work with some of our seniors who may not have a direct path yet in their senior year. And then tonight from 5 to 8, it was open to the community. So we're hoping that many of our community members, because what we talk about workforce shortage at Peterman, we talk about it in our own district and across manufacturers are hurting right now for employees as well, and paying I can tell you, attested in my own family, paying good money to work in the manufacturing world. And they are stressing. It doesn't, like, Millicron pays 100% of college. That's what, 100%. That's what they told me today. So, so it might not be college now. It could be college later. But the idea is that people pay for your college at some point. So trying to get that information to hopefully our parents, moms, let's be honest, moms, to convince some of our students that this could be a great path. And oh, by the way, it's all in Clermont County, so they can stay local as well. So we could go on forever, but it's a wonderful experience for our students today that they had.
Well, and Nate Mahan, our coordinator of WC Your Future, is there kind of running all that. So we're all here, he's there running it and building those relationships and connections. Because I think part of what we're trying to do is to really educate the parents on what the options are. So much of us get into our own fields, our own industries, and kind of have blinders on to some of that. And we are hearing more and more of these opportunities for get involved in this, and down the road, we pay for college. And that's, you know, that's the part you want to hear if you're the parents paying for college. So, some
And are
really,
we
really exciting.
communicating that to parents, or is it just communicated to the kids? Because I don't know that the kids have enough wherewithal to know how good of an opportunity that is, or a good path for them.
Yes, well, we're trying to pair and do both of those. That's why this event was during the day for kids and then afterwards for parents. We even had a section time for teachers.
Yes, today, sorry. Yep.
To understand a little bit more. So we are trying to get better at that, like multi-pronged approach in educating the whole story for people, because there is a lot of great opportunity out there and need that, and we think our kids are great matches for these things, so.
So we have TQL around the bend, a multi-billion-dollar company, and then we have Purina, and then we have all of this in between that really we are in a position well as a school district and for our students to really gain some great networking opportunities and some great career paths.
How about the China plant, Huda, whatever it's called?
Yep.
Oh,
Hudamaki.
They were there today,
Yeah.
actually, yep.
So I know, I had a Bethel parent that went with me on a Europe trip that worked there, and from what she talked about, it was a nice place to work.
Yep, they were there. They have nice swag. What we told them was the kids will come to your table if you have sunglasses, food.
They had red solo cups, is that what they
They had all
brought?
kinds of things, but so the people that didn't have the swag learned today what they had to do the next time. To be quite honest with you.
So then, with these manufacturing places, since they're short-staffed, is there a lot of opportunity for overtime too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not even a choice where my nephew works. It's kind of mandatory. You're going to work 45 hours a week, so at the minimum. So.
We're very excited about that.
Said the mandatory overtime.
So, okay, so that's it, finally. So, finished with my comments.
Okay. Treasurer's comments?
Okay, I'll keep it brief. Next week, we do have a finance committee meeting that's on the 19th. We'll be going over the 5-year forecast at that time, the draft of that before we present it to the board. With that, board meeting's on the 24th, right? I think the next board meeting is coming up.
October 24th.
And then, I don't know, maybe it's just because of age I can make it, and Mr. LaFado's probably the only one that's close to me in that realm, but I do need to,
What?
Yeah, I do need to compliment, when I look around the room, that's it.
That's a
Sorry.
shot.
So, no, it's a compliment, actually. It's a privilege. I really need to compliment the board and the superintendent on the whole formation of the CAC. After, maybe you appreciate it now, after being in the business for 40 years, okay, the ability and the foresight of the superintendent to see that, what can happen with that type of committee, the courage of the board to say, we're going to allow and empower people in the community to take the same data and information that we have at a board level and to go off on their own with some I don't know if I'd call it guidance, I think support of the administration to let them take that data and information, come to their own conclusions with things, and provide a recommendation. That takes courage of a board to do that. That is not common among 600 and some school districts in this state, okay? It's not common for a superintendent to say, I want to take this and give it to the community and do. So it is I know this is probably not the treasurer's comments, but it's mine too. It's a great thing to see.
Can I tag in on what you said?
Yeah.
Not your age.
Please, just because you're in my age group, go ahead.
That was ridiculous. I also have 40 years in education.
I know you did.
I started when I was 15. I got 40 years. And I got to say, going through this process with the CAC, from my background, I was a little skeptical last year when we first started the CAC, but then over time I thought, this is awesome, and you're correct on your comments. So what we did tonight was what we promised. We had a very, very ambitious data research all fall, and Mike and I and Randy, the cabinet, Ellie and Megan and other cabinet members, and then Peterman and Dan, we all chipped in as a team to present this data. I'm really proud of this report. It's gratifying to see it through and then present it, because I think it answers, well, probably not every question, but it answers a lot of questions, and you really get to know a district and the people in the district doing this. So I want to thank Natasha for guiding us, and Dan is absolutely correct. I've been around for a few years, and I've never participated in something like this from literally ground up with community members, and to let them kind of run wild and then come back and have this as a result less than a year later. It's very cool. And he's right. It does not happen, and not happen in any district I've been in. And I was the leader of one district, and I would have never tried this. So yeah, thank you. This was very, very gratifying to go through. And thank you for your crappy comment. I appreciate it.
I think most of us ran on our campaign based on we'll listen to the community. We won't always vote the way that they want us to, but we will absolutely listen to them. And so putting this together absolutely ran in line with what we've all committed to our community.
Yeah.
We're going to listen to you.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we may not vote favorably because we can't afford it or whatever else, but we've listened.
That's very cool.
But we've also, something that we've all promised, and Natasha promised, is transparency.
Yep.
And now we're able, by bringing those community members in, then they can go out and speak to their neighbors, their family members, and say, you know what? They're really not misspending their money. They're not making this up. Like, this is real. Like, I saw the numbers. I'm sitting looking at Barbara, and she was flabbergasted when she saw how much transportation costs. I mean, I was sitting right next to you that night, and her jaw just dropped. And it's, we keep saying, it's expensive, it's expensive. It's like, it's really expensive, and it's even more now. But, it's just, word of mouth.
So I'll end my comments there for fear that I may say something else that. Thank you.
Okay, board comments. Would you like to start?
Sure. This isn't necessarily a school district issue, but it's kind of related. I received a couple phone calls over the weekend from concerned community members about a few of the marijuana dispensaries popping up in our community. And I know that in the past, there have been applications to the township, and the previous administrator brought us into that conversation because we're partners in crime, if you will. And so we were asked our opinion on that, and I believe that they put forth a zoning code that did not allow them in the Union Township community. Now these have popped up without much notice, and apparently no communication with us. And both of those are in close proximity to our elementary. And would you take a look at that and maybe
Sure.
work with the township to see how things have changed and make sure that they.
Did you vote before the board, or you?
We did not vote.
You did not vote, you just.
There was a
you-
conversation that occurred with
Okay.
us.
All right, I can look into it.
Yep.
Kind of like a heads up kind of thing.
Yeah, well, individually, like, how do you feel about that? Ken Geis talked to each of us, but did not share each other's comments with each other, so we were allowed to participate in that kind of conversation. And we knew that there was some kind of a revised code in the zoning commission that did not allow them to go forward with that in our community. And I guess if you're gonna, have conversation, there has to be some consideration on the proximity to our buildings.
Okay. Mr. Becker did, he came to our town hall, and we were grateful for that. He mentioned that to me at the end, so, that this was a possibility, so I will, I'll follow up.
When was that last time?
I'm sorry?
When was that last time?
It's been several years, probably at least 4 or 5.
Haven't there been some Ohio law changes since then, though?
Yeah, I was just writing that because I think the ORC just changed some stuff recently,
Yeah.
in the last couple of years.
I don't know the ins and outs about that. My response.
I'll look into it, just
Yeah,
to
the
see if
response
it's
to the people who called me was, this is not a school district issue. That's something that you'll have to take up with the township. Thank you.
Yeah, just to reiterate what's been said, it's easy to see on big projects like this, you don't just hear from 1 or 2 people, you hear from everybody, and I think that's awesome. I want to thank the CAC as well. I love seeing the work they put in. I especially love when they come and we get to talk to them too. Thank you guys at Peterman. You guys brought a lot of information, answered a lot of questions we had, so thank you. Yeah, I love our team and all the work we put in, and you see it in things like this, so.
Okay, Mr. Patton.
Again, just kind of piggyback with everybody said, I'd like to thank Mr. Young for bringing his elite team with him this evening. They did a great job, and it's always enjoyable to watch the students stand up and get to speak in front of us. Again, I appreciate the partnership that we have with Duke. Hopefully this project will go without any complications, fingers crossed. Again, I appreciate Peterman also for showing up this evening, and again, the work that everybody has put into this. I know this has been a lot of time and effort put into this. The CAC, again, I can't say that enough about the work that they've done a few times. I know that they're working on the safety parts now, and that's near and dear to my heart, so I'll be interested to see some stuff that come out of that. So again, I appreciate the work everybody that does, and I appreciate everything that, the time that everybody puts into this stuff.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Delaney?
Happy fall, happy October. It's been awesome. Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Go get your mammograms.
I would like to personally thank also in front of everybody, Mr. and Mrs. Myers for having date night with us tonight. I saw them when I came in and I asked them if it was date night. I thought that was a really nice thing, showing their dedication to the district. And I would like to thank you for not including me, because I'm just a few years behind you. I feel it every day. Just thanks to everyone. I will not lie and say that I'm not disappointed about the start time. Even though it doesn't affect me, I very passionately believe that a later start time changes the whole scene. And I'm sorry we couldn't do it, but maybe someday. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so our next meeting we said is the 24th. Do we need executive session?
We don't.
Okay, so looking for a motion to adjourn. All right, Mr. Tremley is second.
I'll second it.
Mr. Patton, any discussion? Mr. Romano?
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney.
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Yes.
5 yes.